What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here. Today we're going to talk a little Gemrate data. We're going to do a 2-for-1. We're going to quickly look at the December numbers and then look a little deeper at the yearly numbers because we are now in January 2025. And that means we have a year's worth of data to look at from our old pal Gemrate. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Quick little glance at December. The big takeaway here is pretty much everybody stayed the same. Beckett did rebound slightly, but remember, they were way down last month when everybody else was not. The scary number here that jumps out is the down 28% year over year for Beckett. Spoilers, things aren't too great on their yearly numbers either. More on that in a minute. The other notable thing is a pretty big bump up for CGC. A lot of that on the year over year. A decent chunk of that is sports. And then also TCG as they continue to do really well in that category. Also on the monthly numbers, we do have tag and arena clubs. RIP still to HGA. They have announced that they're still alive, but have not actually started accepting cards yet. Arena Club comes in with their normal 11,000, 10,000, whatever they've been doing, essentially all for their repack nonsense. And Tag back up again, 24,000, just over 24,000 estimated. However, they've been doing the Pokemon repack stuff for a while. They did another 10K in Pokemon, and then they did another 10K in other TCG, which is, and I forget the name of the company, I don't have it handy, but there was a new, sounds like a new basically startup TCG that had Tag grade a bunch of promo cards for giveaways. So 20 of that 24,000, over 10,000 of it is Pokemon. It was like 10.7 or something. And just under 10,000 was for this new TCG. So if you factor those out, they've only did about 4,000 cards last month. Actually, a little less than 4,000 cards not in those two categories. So once again, their numbers completely are propped up by either the Pokemon repack or these other TCG partnerships. Great for them, gets business through the door, no complaints there. However, it is really hard to judge what actual consumer demand for their product is, because without those people keeping them afloat, it does not seem like it's very high. Let's hop over and get to the real shebang, and that is the yearly numbers. Let's run through these really quickly. First off, overall grading up for the year. 20 million cards were graded across the four major grading companies. That is a 16% increase over the 2023 numbers. 2023 was 17 million. Sports saw a 25% year over year increase, and TCG saw a 6% year over year increase. That does include non-sports as well. Bold prediction for next year. Next year will be a big TCG year. I have a sneaking suspicion that most of the growth is seen on the TCG side of things. One, Pokemon's super hot. That's not a hot take at all. Two, keep in mind, we're kind of in for a weird year for sports, as basketball does not have a good draft class, and that drives a lot of the grading activity. And this past year, we had a ton of Wemby and Caitlin Clark stuff get submitted. And while we'll still see a lot of Caitlin Clark stuff get submitted, we probably aren't going to see a lot of rookies from the NBA class get submitted. So I think that could potentially hold back sports ever so slightly. We'll see. We'll see. That and TCG is on pace for a record 2025. PSA overall combined numbers up 13%, CGC up 27%, and is second place in the overall. SGC third, up 46% year over year. And this is where things get a little ugly. Beckett, the only company of the big four, down year over year and down 15%. So grading overall for the year went way up, 15% up. Beckett went down 15%. They were the only company to see any decrease, let alone a significant decrease. They only did 606, just under 660,000 cards for the year. To put that in comparison, Gemrate notes on the side there, Tag did 240,000 cards last year. Now, most of that was repacks, but they still did 240K cards. Beckett came in not even close to 1 million, not even close to 750,000. So, rough year for Beckett. We will see what this year brings. They have their new round of funding. We will see what they could do with it and what these numbers look like heading into next year. The problem is, in my opinion, is it's going to take time to fix Beckett. This is not an overnight fix. So what happens between now and when they start making things better? I think that's going to take a little bit of time, and numbers still could continue to trend down while that is going on, and as they continue to lose market share. Let's look at the splits. Sports, PSA 9 million, SGC just under 2 million. Beckett comes in third here at 330,000, and CGC comes in fourth at 280,000. In this category, Beckett and CGC both saw downtrends in the year-over-year numbers, while SGC saw a big increase, and PSA saw a pretty significant increase at 25 and 50%. Do keep in mind, for SGC specifically, they had massive capacity increase throughout this year, which is probably why they saw such a large increase in the year-over-year numbers. On the TCG side of things, PSA stayed flat, 6 million, just over 6 million. CGC, big increase here, and firmly in second place, and a decent chunk of that pie. You know, when you look at PSA at 6 million and CGC at 2 million, that's, I mean, there's a pretty big gap there, but it's a lot closer than a lot of the other categories. And they were up 36% year over year. Beckett, once again, 15% is their number. They were down 15% in TCG as well. SGC, TCG has never been their strong suit, but they are up 20% year over year. That being said, I think they have been slowing down to end 2024 in the TCG side of things. So I would be surprised if SGC carries the TCG momentum over into 2025. It really seems like it's PSA and CGC's game, with Beckett getting some scraps for people chasing black labels. Here is the market share. PSA in the overall is 76% of the market. And if you look at it from the lens of Collector's Universe, because remember, they own SGC as well, Collector's Universe controls 85% of the grading market. CGC coming in at 11% and Beckett at 3%. That is right. Once hobby darling, Beckett now has 3% of the grading market share in 2024. Rough stuff. Sports, pretty similar numbers to what you'd expect. CGC, they do not have a big presence in sports. SGC does. CGC has a big presence in TCG. SGC does not. I know collectors ended up purchasing SGC. I was always of the belief, and I stand by this, CGC and SGC were a match made in heaven prior to the Collector's Universe acquisition. If those two companies could have ever figured things out to come together, I think they could have actually, I don't want to say given PSA a run. I'm not a crazy person, but I think that would have been a pretty formidable company to deal with if SGC and CGC combined their might together. But that ship sailed. Nat Turner said, nah, we'll just buy them instead. And they now absolutely dominate the market share. Grades by category, not surprising. TCG, the number one category for PSA, followed by baseball, basketball, and football. And then you get down into the other categories. A couple other things I wanted to look at here, the share by category. This graph just visually represents the dominance of PSA. And it does, the couple things that it does show is where SGC has some advantages over some of the other companies. Them having 21% of their market share in baseball to me is not super surprising because they offer a lot of sports or a lot of baseball specials. They do those top specials all the time where you can get $10 grading. So it's not surprising for me to see them kind of be the dominant second place in the baseball category. Items graded by era, not surprising at all. PSA dominates ultra modern, and really across the board, most of the grading companies are getting stuff in from ultra modern. A couple outliers here, the biggest one being CGC TCG. 22% of their market share or their percentage of items graded were from the 90s is a little surprising to me. That seems a little odd. And they also had a very high percentage for the 2000s as well. So that was a little bit strange to me. Those were two numbers that really kind of stuck out. Other than that, everything here seems pretty on par. SGC Sports dominates the vintage category, 50s and earlier. That was 10% of their overall business last year. Same with TCG. Nobody else is even close to that. PSA even is only at 2.9%. Now, PSA probably graded more cards overall, but if you're talking about percentage of business, SGC performs very well in that category. Most graded sets. Prism Football, number 1. Prism Basketball, number 2. A couple years from now, this will probably be all Topps Chrome. Next up, Select Basketball and Optic Football, rather, which was a little surprising. One thing I'd be curious to know, and I could ask Gemrate this, I wonder if 2023 Panini Prism and Select includes Caitlin Clark, or if that got separated out. I don't know if that would be included in there or not, as she does have some stuff in those sets. Most graded players. Wemby, number 1. 403,000 cards graded in 2024 were Wemby's. Almost double Jordan, who was second. Absolutely wild. Stroud comes in at number 3, not surprising. Ohtani, the first baseball player on the list, rather, coming in at 4th. And then a pretty big drop-off as we drop down to Anthony Richardson as number 5. Then we go into Kobe and LeBron, Ellie De La Cruz, Anthony Edwards, and then there's Caitlin Clark down there towards the bottom of the list, but still ranking in the upper tier. More Caitlin Clark cards graded last year than Ken Griffey Jr. is impressive. And then Patrick Mahomes last on that list. Most graded cards, we'll just look at a handful of these. Victor Prism, number 1, 40,000 Victor Prisms were graded in 2023. Is absolutely wild. Now that includes base and all the parallels, but that is absolutely craziness. The only non-ultra modern card to appear, 89 Griffey. That's right. Remains undefeated. 10,000 of those bad boys graded. On the TCG side of things, most graded sets, not surprising at all. And I don't even really know Pokemon singles that well, but I do know the sets a little bit. 151 Japanese, 151 English, one of the most popular Pokemon sets ever. The Crown Zenith high on here is not surprising. That set is very popular as well. Those are some numbers that jumped out for me on the TCG side of things. Most graded subjects, Charizards and Pikachus, baby. Get triggered. I said Charizard. That's right. The one non-Pokemon to make it, One Piece. One Piece snuck into the list right in the middle amongst a whole bunch of Pokemon. Also, not surprising, One Piece, very, very popular. Most graded cards in TCG, dominated by Pokemon. Whole bunch of Charizards and Pikachus on that list as well. And then we get into the SGC numbers. We don't need to break these down. If you want to check them out, you could go over and look at the Gemrate post. He does not go into the other grading companies, just PSA and SGC. So that is the year of grading in 2024. I think a lot of people would be surprised that grading went up again this year. Now, have we reached the top? Next year come along, do we have another percentage increase, a decrease, or about the same? I'm not 100% sure. I really don't know. I could see, like I said at the very beginning, a weak NBA draft class could hurt things. And then I think 2026, depending on how the market goes, could potentially be a massive year because that's when Topps enters the market full go with all the licenses. And you could get some weirdness. Like this year, numbers could have also been slightly inflated because we had some overlap. You had Victor stuff in Topps Chrome Basketball unlicensed, but still cards being graded, and Prism. Now, obviously, Prism got graded a lot more, but still, some top stuff definitely went through the door on the unlicensed thing, and you're going to continue to see that throughout this year. So, grading business as a whole continues to remain absolutely wild. Just wild times out there in the streets on the grading numbers. 20 million cards graded in 1 year is insanity. That is so many cards. As always, curious for your thoughts and comments down below. What does 2025 have in store for the year of grading? Let me know in the comments down below. We will catch you boys and girls on the next one. Peace.